Shabbat Shalom, everybody. If you want to take a look at one of the most dramatic scenes in Torah, I would encourage you to open up this week's Torah portion. Tavo offers one of these instances where we can imagine what the Israelites are going through. After they've crossed the Jordan River, Moses commands half the tribes to stand on what's called Mount Gerizim, and the other half to stand on what's called Mount Ebal. They are two peaks of the same mountain range. The Levite priests, they say, then announce blessings toward Mount Gerizim and curses towards Mount Ebal. With each announcement, the entire people respond together with a resounding amen. Later in the book of Joshua, the scene is described again more in detail. It adds on that the priests are actually standing in the valley between the two mountains. Half are facing Gerizim and half are facing Ebal. And we learn that the valley forms a natural amphitheater of sorts, amplifying the voices of the priests so everyone could hear. You imagine it. The sounds of thousands of voices echoing between mountains, affirming together with an amen their shared covenant with God. Then the rabbis add on even further. They say Mount Gerizim is lush with gardens and orchards and vineyards. They say there's 70 flowing streams. Where Mount Ebal, on the other hand, is dry and barren. It's nicknamed the Cursed Mountain. And the image seems very clear, right? Blessings versus curses, life versus death, good versus evil. It's easy to read this as a stark dichotomy, that one group is destined for blessing and the other group is destined for curse. I think about this image sometimes during our own moments of communal prayer, when we fill the sanctuary on the High Holy Days and voices of hundreds rise together in Shema Yisrael or Avinu Malkeinu or Shalom Rav. Right? There's a power that transcends the individual. It's not my voice, it's not your voice. It's an echoing chorus, kind of a living amphitheater that happens right in the sanctuary or right in the chapel. And it reminds us that we are part of that collective covenant. That moment where we are bound together by the sounds of our own voices is about as close as I can imagine to what our ancestors must have felt at this mountain range. But we know that Torah is never one meaning, so we imagine this isn't just about the blessings and curses, the dichotomy of good and evil. If we read further into the commentary, the rabbis lead us towards other meanings. Rashi explains that this wasn't as much about the separation of blessings and curses, but leans into the idea that it's about the coming together of people around a greater goal. He taught that when the children of Israel heard and accepted the blessings and curses by the amen response altogether, they were taking on the obligation to become mutually responsible and liable for one another. Announcing the blessings and curses with the whole community provides a societal awareness of sorts for what's right and what's wrong. No one could claim ignorance, and no one could say that the covenant was theirs alone. Responsibility was shared and woven into the very fabric of the community. Rashi's vision of the Israelites in this moment speaks to where we are today as we approach the High Holy Days. Tomorrow night, we'll gather for Slichot, the service that begins this sacred season. Like the Israelites in this next month, we'll speak in the plural, right? We'll say, Ashamnu, we'll say, Begadnu. We have sinned, we have betrayed. Our prayers are not only about the personal failings, but about the collective responsibility. And yet, if we think about it today, how fragile that vision of mutual responsibility feels in a week like this. Or I'll go further than fragile, how broken it feels. As we enter the peacefulness of Shabbat, we can't ignore the lack of peace that has left a mark on our society this week. I'm not going to dive deep into each event because there have been many of them. But what I'll say is well known across channels after particularly the events of yesterday is that political violence and the hateful rhetoric that follows tears apart the very fabric of responsibility that the rabbis envisioned on these two mountains. Right? Instead of affirming one another as covenantal partners, it reduces human beings to enemies or symbols, and instead of engaging respectfully, compassionately, and even passionately with those whom we disagree, it seeks to silence them. Where Torah imagines a chorus of voices echoing amen in an amphitheater of mountains, violence collapses that chorus into silence and fear. And when Torah calls us to collective accountability, violence denies our shared humanity. That's exactly why the Israelites' amen matters. Each amen indicated a promise that we won't abandon one another, not in times of blessing and not in times of curse. I don't claim to have answers any more than any of you do about how we navigate the times that we're living in. To end the senseless losses of life that permeates through our world on a literal daily basis. But that amen of sorts might be part of what we need. Hearing and internalizing Rashi's call to mutual responsibility, to bind ourselves again to dignity and compassion and accountability. And when I think of that ancient amphitheater, I think of us, again, our sanctuary, which will soon be filled on Rosh Hashanah, the moment we rise and voices join in Shema or Avinu Malkeinu. And in that moment, we too are standing between the mountains, not knowing what the year will bring, but letting our voices rise together in hope, in covenant, and in solidarity. Our tradition does not deny that there are curses in this world, but it insists that even in the valley between Gerizim and Ebal, we can still raise our voices together and we can still say amen. Almost using that amen as an effort towards hope and effort towards peace. So as we lead up to our most holy of days, when we say amen this year, may it be an amen not only for ourselves, but for all who live with fear when there should be blessing, and all who long for peace where there is only conflict, and for all who need hope when despair exists. May we continue to be strong enough to resist hate and courageous enough to reject violence and faithful enough to let our voices echo together in the hope of peace. And so we end with a prayer that has carried our people through valleys and across mountains, through violence and into hope. We say, Osei Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael, ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel. May the one who makes peace on high make peace for us, for all Israel, and for all who dwell on earth. And let us all say, Amen.